Thank you, Jay, for coming out for my first ever podcast. I want to ask you some questions. What were your biggest inspirations growing up and why?
Ooh, good question. I think inspiration is one of those things that it comes from many different places. And I guess my first inspiration was my parents, having support, parents that just allowed me to be who I was and allowed me to play and allowed me to really chase my dreams, allowed me to take risks in this life. And I think for me, having my parents is my first inspiration to go and, do the things that I was able to do on the soccer field and play in a World Cup and captain a team in the Premier League and in the MLS. Those are the types of big accomplishments that we can look back on and say that was really fun and really cool. But, I think a lot of times it takes a lot of people to get to those places. And my parents were always a great inspiration for me. And then as I became a pro, I was inspired by a lot of other players, like the players that were in front of me, players like John Terry, center backs like Nemanja Vidic from Manchester United. These are the players that I tried to aspire to be, and they inspired me to be better on the field. And so I think, those are the type of players I looked up to during my days as a player. And now I'm actually inspired by kids, and kids that have big dreams, and kids that want to be inspired and want to go and try to do things that I did. And so I think, all of those three things are what I'm inspired by to this day.
I know that there are arguments on who's better, Messi or Ronaldo. Who do you personally think is a more circular player?
Ooh, that's a great question. First, I got to say both of those guys over the last 20 years have been the best players in the world. So I do have to give credit to both. I am fortunate enough to be able to say I've played against both of those guys a lot of times. So I've played Messi and Ronaldo each 3 times. What I would say about them is, if I have to answer the question truly, I would say Messi. Mainly because Messi is more of a team player, in my opinion. I think he is someone that really brings the group around. He's humble in his approach, and he always delivers. And leadership isn't just the guy that talks too loud. Leadership is the guy that shows how good he is. And Messi's been a great leader on the field by showing how good he is and being the example of how the game should be played. So I'm going to stick with Lionel.
Yeah, I agree too. I know soccer pros and most athletes, people care about their diets. How strict were your diets during the game days?
I mean, diets should be strict, especially as athletes. And so for me, it was about understanding where my energy came from. And food is energy. Nutrition is energy. And so, the most energy I could get on the field for 93 minutes was built by what I eat. And so what I had to learn was how soon I ate before a game. Because for me, I like to eat 3 hours before a game, not 2. Most people eat 2 hours before a game. But I learned that 3 hours was better for me. So I didn't feel full. I made sure that my nutrition was well-rounded, so I eat a lot of vegetables, I eat a lot of colors, and so how I looked at my nutrition was always the color wheel, we call it. And so, you always on your plate, you always want to have a lot of colors, and so that always allowed me to get the most energy and the most nutrients that allowed me to perform the way that I did. And so when you look at your plate, when you look at what you're eating, if you look at your plate and there's not a lot of colors, you need to add more, because think about all the fruits, think about all the vegetables, think about all the things you eat. They're all different colors. And so you have to make sure that all those colors are represented on your plate each time you eat, and generally you'll be pretty nutritious.
So you decide what you eat?
I did, yeah. And so, again, athletes need a lot of carbohydrates because that's our energy to burn. We need protein because that helps our muscles. And we need hydration, which is, water, lemon water, certain, Gatorades, things like this, that help us with our fuel. And so all of those pieces really matter, but it's about making sure that you get the right things that work for you.
I know that you were first ever captain on the Whitecaps team. How did you get chosen to be a captain?
Well, that's the beautiful thing about being a captain, is that you don't choose yourself. Somebody else chooses you. And so in a way, the first thing that you love is that the fact that you get to be that person. Somebody else chose you to be the leader of that team. And I think that for me was always the ultimate honor. But then once you get the honor, now you got to do something with it. You have to be able to stand in front of 28 guys and create messaging and help each individual player to be the best versions of themselves. And so that becomes a really hard job. But what captains do well is they communicate, and they make it 1v1. Because if you think about the management of communication and the people within the programs, I have to think of them as each individual things. We are in a team, but I know that you need something different, and I know he needs something different, and I know he needs something different. And so for me, it was an honor, but it was also a lot of work to understand why people get inspired, what makes them the best player that they can be. And so for my job as a captain, I took that very serious to make sure I got to know my players, and I got to ask them a lot of questions, and I got to find out what really drives them in the core of what makes them perform the best on a Saturday in front of 40,000 people. And I think, that's the best part about being a leader and a captain, is that it's not about you, it's about everybody else. And so being able to communicate and to ask good questions and to challenge people to be the best versions of themselves is again challenging, but it's also really fun, because when those pieces really come together and everyone comes together and does what they said they wanted to do and are the players that they said they wanted to be, that's when wins happen, that's when trophies happen, and that's the beauty of the sport. And so I just got to be able to do that for a long time.
So you were there on the first year of Vancouver Whitecaps game?
Yes. And I was the captain of the Whitecaps for the first 4.5 seasons. I retired mid-season. I threw a couple injuries in my ankle, but for 4.5 years, I got to lead the Whitecaps. We got to grow the brand, and we got to bring a really cool soccer culture to Vancouver. And that, again, this game is so beautiful, and it's so much bigger than us as players. This game is built within the fabric of the stands, the people and the fans that love it, the administrators that help bring in the good players, and then the players that go out and perform. And so all of those pieces fit, but the captain has to be right in the middle of all of it. And for me, it was the ultimate privilege.
I was just about to ask, what was your worst injury, and how did you recover from it?
My worst injury was actually not my ankle, it was my eye. I had an eye transplant 6 months before the World Cup. So my cornea, which imagine your eye as a planet, and the ozone layer. And so our corneas are our ozone layers. So you don't change your eyeball, you just change the surface of your eye. And I got an eye infection of a scratch of a cornea, a piece of dirt scratched my eye, and I lost 70% of my eye tissue in 36 hours to a bad infection. And so I had to get my full window replaced in my eye 6 months before the World Cup. And so I had to sit in the dark for a month, and then I had to play with a stitch in my eye for 2 months. And then I had to get to the World Cup. I made the team, and I actually, the craziest story is that they took the stitch out of my eye because they thought my eye would be able to hold. But when I got to South Africa to play against Wayne Rooney in England, my cornea collapsed. And so I was back to blind in my right eye 6 days before the England game. But my agent was in England, and he said, I can make you a contact through an eye doctor that I know, and we'll be able to play. And my agent flew in the morning of the England game, landed with a contact that I could wear, and at 3 p.m. before I played against the best player in the world at the time, Wayne Rooney, against England, I was able to see for the first time in 6 days in my right eye, and I was able to play the best game I ever had. And Wayne Rooney had 0 touches in the box for 75 minutes of that 90-minute game. Because you know what? When I was able to understand that I can see and I'm inspired to play, it's amazing what you can do against the best players in the world. Because when you believe in yourself that you can do a job, and you think that the fact that I can even just see in this moment is going to give me the energy that's required to compete, then we create special moments. And that was one of my biggest moments from that injury.
In the World Cup, did you play for United States or England?
I played for the U.S. I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And so I got to represent the USA at the national team level, and I got to play in the World Cup in 2010.
Was your teammate ever Pulisic?
No, he was a little bit younger than me. My teammates, the famous U.S. soccer players I played with, were Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, Tim Howard, one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time, and guys like that. And so I got to play with some of the best back in the day, but I'm just way older than you, so you you wouldn't get it from there. But either way, those guys are great players, and they really helped with the American soccer fabric of how we as North Americans became really good in this game.
What do you think is the best goalie ever played?
Best goalie to ever play? I'm going to say Oliver Kahn from Germany. I'm going to say Tim Howard, though, because I got to play with him, and he's one of the best goalkeepers ever. He played for Everton in the Premier League for many years, played for Manchester United, and also has, I don't know if it's true now, but at the time, in the last World Cup in Brazil, he made more saves than any goalkeeper did in World Cup history, and I got to play with him.
Did you ever play Barcelona?
I never got to play Barcelona. At Watford, we never made the Champions League, and that's the only time we'd ever play someone else from a different country in the club version. But I did get to play Messi in Argentina 3 times, and so I got to kick him and try to chase him around, which is like trying to chase around a dog and trying to figure out. You ever met a Boston Terrier before? Those little dogs that you just can't keep up with, and they run around, and you keep trying to grab them and put a leash on them, but you just can't get a hold of them. And that's what it's like to play against Lionel Messi. You try to kick him, you try to get around him, you try to disrupt his game, but he's way too far ahead of you, and that's why he's the best player in the world.
Do you know if any other professional players are jealous of the position of a captain?
Normally, that's not the case. Normally, the people that want to be captains are vocal about their leadership abilities to want to lead. I think sometimes maybe jealousy is the wrong word. I would say maybe more disappointed that they don't get the role, because jealousy doesn't work in teams. When you're jealous and you try to be like other people, or you're saying you can't do this because I don't want to do it, and jealousy becomes those things, it makes teams worse. It doesn't make teams better. And so I think it's important for all leaders, especially captains, to make sure that jealousy doesn't exist on teams and that we're all in this together.
What responsibilities do you get being a captain?
Well, I think the biggest responsibility is really being the center of it all. As a captain, you are the center and the spokesperson for the players. You're the spokesperson for the team, and so you're always doing media, and you're always being the messenger for what the club wants. But then you're also the person that gets to talk to the coaches and the administrators that help with the players and how we manage them. And so the captain's always in the middle of it all. And so in a way, it's the greatest honor, but it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of things you got to do to make sure that the team is doing things the right way. And I think, again, the fact that, again, we don't get chosen as captains, we get to have the honor of wearing the armband because somebody else said that we're capable of doing that. And I think that's always the best thing about being a captain, is that we are capable of doing that. And when you go out and lead and you do it outside of yourself, it makes teamwork become that much more special.
So does the coach pick if, let's say somebody isn't playing very well, the coach picks if they should get subbed off or something?
Yeah, I mean, in a team, it's the coach. And I, even the captain, I can question the coach, but the coach rules. And it's the coach's system and the coach rules. And so at the end of the day, we have to listen. Because that's why we're on the team, and they've chosen us to be a part of this team, so we have to listen to our coaches.
Was there a specific age when your performance started degrading?
Degrading? Good question. Yeah, I would say at the end of my career. Injuries suck, in all honesty. And I had a lot of injuries at the end of my career. I ruptured my Achilles. I ruptured my peroneal tendon on the same ankle 6 months later. And that's when I started to realize that my career was starting to go south and not be as good as it once was. And in a way, that made me feel bad. It made me feel disappointed that I couldn't keep playing. But in the end, it made me really happy because I got to have a 12-year career, and I got to play against and with some of the best players in the world, and I got to play in a World Cup, and I got to be captains of teams in the Premier League and MLS, and I ended up having a lot of gratitude and a lot of and giving a lot of thanks to what I was able to accomplish. And even though my career ended the way that I didn't necessarily want it to be, so again, that was detrimental maybe to my mindset in the beginning. But in the end, I really realized that I was so fortunate to be able to play so long and have so many great experiences and make so many friends and have my family come around and watch all these amazing games and all these amazing parts of the world. And that's the beauty of this sport.
Is there something you don't like about soccer?
I wouldn't say there's not anything I don't like about soccer. I think the violence sometimes could be a little bit better. I think there's in certain parts of the world, people try to fight each other because they think it's cool, and I don't think that in the soccer culture it needs to be like that. I think we need to respect each other, and I think we need to say, hey, I like the way that you play, and I hope I beat you today, but I don't want to fight you. I want to give you a high five at the end of the game and say good job.
So you said you played in the Premier League. Did you play Liverpool?
It's funny, I got to play at Liverpool, at Anfield, my first ever season as a pro at Watford. I was 23 years old. No one picked me until I was 23. And my first season, I was walk-on. I was a walk-on. My first contract was £25,000. Not 25 million, 25,000, which is a minimum wage job now. And my first season, they were looking for new blood, and they needed someone that was cheap. And they brought me in at Watford in England, and it turns out the guy in front of me got injured for 6 weeks. And so I came in and I played 6 games in a row, and they sold him at Christmas, and they kept me. And what that allowed me to understand was that I get to go and play against the best players in the world now, so I better believe that I belong here. And there's no better place to know that you belong there than walking out at Anfield in front of 40,000 people at a cup final and doing a good job. And so that really allowed me to give myself confidence that I belong there and that I should be there. And then I had a great career at Watford for the rest of my time there.
And I know you created a program, Rise and Shine. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, and that's what tonight was all about. And again, so thank you guys for coming. But Rise and Shine is a youth program, and we start at 12 years old. But we work with kids from all walks of life, and we want to make sure that we develop them in a bunch of different ways. And so we run soccer programs, we have DJ programs, and we also do leadership programs. But we don't just talk about soccer or in our soccer program. We bring up mentors that are fire chiefs and animators that build video games or CEOs that have sold their companies. And so each day you meet a mentor that's a professional at something else. And so you come up to this 3-day experience and you meet a bunch of highly professional people, all while learning the sport that you already know and love. And so what that does is it creates a better mindset for you to know that you can be whatever you want in this life. And if soccer sometimes doesn't work for you, then you should go be in something else that's more meant for you. And I think that's what our program always tries to promote and really tries to educate with the kids that come through our walls every year.
Did you make this program, or is it like a sponsor that you're doing?
No, I developed this many years ago because I come from the other programs. I wasn't a part of academy programs when I was a kid. I played a bunch of sports. I had parents that were teachers and gym coaches and things like that. And so that allowed me to be, the word is called holistic, and that means well-rounded. And so when I became a pro and then I became captains, I was like, where's the well-rounded programs? Why aren't these kids getting a well-rounded experience within the centers that allow these kids to know that even if they fail at soccer, they might be good at being a chef, or maybe they should go be a fire chief or a CEO of a company someday, or learn how to run a business? Why aren't we giving those kids those environments earlier that allow them to continue to develop themselves, so by the time they're 18, 19, 20, they can go and perform in whatever way that they want?
And where is this camp? Where is this camp?
The camp is in Whistler. It's in Whistler. It's in the mountains, so we always do hikes. We always do really fun things in nature. We go to the lake and swim and be kids. And so that's also part of development, just being a kid and having fun. And that's also part of how we develop and how we build our curriculums. And again, you meet a lot of really cool people. You meet a lot of new friends from a bunch of different environments. And how we actually raise money through the charity tonight was to find underserved community kids. And so we go to the First Nation programs and the inner city programs, and we find these kids that come up for free that get to join in on the experience. And so you get to meet so many different kids from different backgrounds that allows other kids to learn about other kids and learn about how we all develop as humans. And that's the point of the program.
So is it in summer?
It's in the summer. It's in August. We have 2 soccer camps, August 6th to 8th and August 20 to 22nd. So if you guys are around, if you want to take a look, go to our website. It's called rxsmentorship.com, or follow me on social media. We'll do lots of different things. And our RXS Mentorship is also a page on Instagram, so anyone can go there and learn more about the program.
So it's from 12 to what?
12 to 18. It's basically all through high school.
Okay.
We have different ages and different kids. And so, yeah, we just love a holistic experience. We want to make sure it's a well-rounded and fun time. And we have a lot of great experiences, and looking forward to August.
And what was your most memorable goal, if you have one?
Ooh, the most memorable goal I've ever had was the playoff final, 2006. I got to play against Leeds in the playoff final to the Premier League, and I scored the first goal on a corner kick in front of 62,000 people, and won man of the match to help get Watford promoted to the Premier League. And so I was standing in the middle of the field with this glass ball, going, 2 years ago, I was a design student in Chicago with nobody giving me a chance that I would ever make it pro, and look at me now. And that's the best thing about life, is that sometimes when you take it upon yourself to believe in it, to get better every day, those types of moments can happen. So I think scoring that goal and getting me into that environment and giving me the life that I have, it's about those types of moments, and that goal helped me get to my greatest moments.
And our last one. What was your favorite teammate to play with on the Whitecaps team?
Ooh, my favorite teammate at the Whitecaps, I've got a couple. Number one was our first goalkeeper, Joe Cannon. He was a really experienced player, really positive guy, so I really liked him. And then my second one was Davide Cimiento. He was our midfielder, and he was a playmaker, like Xavi, Iniesta, those guys that really are good on the ball. They can make passes that no one else can see. And I just loved playing with him because he was so creative, and watching the way that he worked and played the game. For me as a defender, I wasn't a creator. I was a lockdown defender, so my skills were different. But watching somebody be able to grab the ball and spray it around and really create their own environment in the game, kind of like what Messi does, is what Davide did for the Whitecaps. And I love playing with him.
Thank you for joining me on my first ever podcast, Jay.
My absolute pleasure, and thanks for having me.